You know, when you look at Facebook, this is what you see, but this is what it used to look like. Are you going to invest in that freckle-faced dude? This is Apple now, but did you know that Steve Jobs had a very, very difficult time raising money? Very, very difficult time raising money. With Ring, I got there too late. I literally was like maybe 3 months too late. With Brian, the reason I did is because his previous company had just crashed. So there's always a reason. So the reason I bring it up is, despite the fact that it looks good when you look at it in retrospect, we always come up with reasons. I always look for reasons to say no, not to say yes. Is that good? Who the hell knows? But it makes me a lot more conservative. But, you know, right now we're trying to spend time to find the ones that we would say yes to. And the way we're going about it now is a little bit different. We spend quite a lot of time with people before we invest. So you cannot come to me and say, hey, Ivan, we have a great team and we want to raise money, and say, okay, let's have a meeting, let's have another coffee, or no. Don't tell me about your company, and what do I want to hear when we meet? Anybody. So somehow you get to me, and that's another story how you get to me. Let's say you do get to me and we're having a coffee together. How do you start the conversation? I'll give you the best example. Dan and I just met with someone, and this guy is, I think we're going to move forward with the investment actually. And he got it. And I never say, tell me about your company. I always say, tell me about yourself. And he said, I was a laborer. I worked in construction sites. I said, what the hell does that mean? He goes, you know, I had to do the digging and I had to do the laboring and this and that. And then I worked for 7 years until I became pretty senior at this construction company. Then I moved on and I worked for this Windows company. And he gave me his life story. And then he explained, and until one day, I was on the 42nd floor of this building, and this piece of metal fell and almost killed somebody. And that's when we realized we didn't have any safety procedures in place. And that's when I decided to start this company. Nice, right? Do I care if it's true? God, no. It's a great story. And the fact that I remember the details is all that matters. So Brian Lee with The Honest Company, he goes, you know, if you see what's going on around us, kids getting sick, there's autism, life expectancy, people are always this, bad, this. And if you look at what is inside your kitchen cabinets, it's all toxic stuff. This is going to really hurt people. That we have to change that. And we're going to be changing that using The Honest Company. Story. Always, always, always is a story. Because if you ask any professional investor, the only people they remember are the ones with a good story. Let me give you the other side of the story. I have a very good friend of mine who's one of my LPs. He's one of the largest owners of real estate in the United States, in particular shopping centers. He has a brother. So the brother's a techie, and they had developed a software for all the shopping centers, and they decided to now make the brother the CEO and take this company and, you know, spin it off and raise money for it and all that. The company already did 2 to 3 million in revenues. It was enterprise software for real estate. I mean, it doesn't get hotter than that. I met with the brother. I couldn't get him to tell me what's the problem he's solving. For 2 months, he kept saying, our software provides great data analytics. So he could say that about anything. I put him in front of about 24 of the top investors that were interested in the company. As soon as they met him, they immediately walked. It's not the software, it's not your company, it's you, bottom line. So if you think about it, on average, we look at about 100 to 1. So there's actually 1,000 to 100 to 1, but of the 1,000, the first 250, 500 go very quickly because they don't meet the initial criteria. So on average, I have about 20 to 25 calls a week, just with founders. So that's exactly what we do. It's about 100 to 1. It's very time consuming. The standards that we implement are what we call institutional class. In other words, it is not what you think you're having a conversation. We actually go through a very rigorous process, and it takes 40 to 60 hours per company if you want to move to a term sheet. Is this a backable team? And very briefly, let's say what do you think I look for when I meet a founder? What's the single most important factor for me? If they sit in front of me and they can't build rapport with me, how the hell are they going to go after her to hire her? How are they going to find the best people to hire? How are they going to raise the next round with the next investor? How are they going to find the best customers? The ability to build rapport. The number one thing we look for. And the number two, clarity. Clarity, clarity. So what is the problem you're solving? I have had the following. It is very complicated. We have a 5-minute video that explains it. I am not joking. Really. So what do you think this company, where are you going to be within 6 to 12 months? Oh, we're going to do 300 million next year. What are you at right now? Well, we're pre-revenue. I mean, you hear nonsense that is just beyond belief, but people do it. The man that said that to me has a MD from Harvard, by the way. And he's still pre-revenue, is 2 years later. So we look at the ability of this company to be poised for growth. Or do we think they have the ability to grow really fast? How do you know that? The market, is it a big enough market into which you can grow? And is that market growing fast enough? And then you have to have, obviously, the infrastructure to get into it. We want to make sure there's no debt on the balance sheet. To me, that's bad. We want to make sure that they have a clean cap table, the directory of the ownership of the company. That's all it is. We want to make sure they're creating a defensible business model. So every good company is copied, but how are they going to be different? We want to make sure we have good terms and conditions, that we have favorable deal terms, that we're getting at a good valuation, and that they're solving a big problem, among other things. It is very, very important for people that want to invest is to really, really understand the terminology. What are stock options? What is the stock option pool going to be? Is this a convertible note? Is it a safe note? Is it a price round? What's the pre-money line? What's the pro rata options? And the list goes on and on. To somebody like me, it's very, very mechanical because you do the same thing over and over. It's not a big deal. But I'm going to tell you one story, which is very personal to me, which is why I've decided to do this for the past 25 years. I had started a software company that became very, very successful. I had a very good friend, well, at least I thought he was a good friend. And he had another company, and we merged the two companies together, and we raised a lot of money, and we acquired another 8 companies together. I did not understand finance at all. My job was to find the acquisitions. I ran a lot of the sales. I ran the operations. What I didn't understand is all the acquisitions were done using participating preferred, and all the new investors that came in had participating preferred versus just preferred. Preferred stock says, I invest in your company, let's say at $100 million valuation. If you sell the company for more than $100 million, my stock converts into common. We own everything pro rata. If it sells for less than $100 million, I take my original investment back. All right? That's simple preferred stock. Participating preferred says, we're investing in your company $100 million valuation. I'm putting in, let's say, $10 million. If it sells for more than $100 million, first I take out my $10 million of cash, and then I take out my percentage. What if that company sells for, let's say, $20 million? I take out my $10 million first, and then I take my percentages. What is left for the other people? Very little. Now imagine 8 or 9 set of investors all coming in with participating preferred, adding up to maybe $100 million. You sell the company for, let's say, $200 million, you get zero. We sold the company, I literally received $0 after about 11 years. Zero. Participating preferred. I am very allergic to that term, by the way. So one of the things is, like especially within YPO, people call me all the time, what do you think of this? There's a lot of funds that are really, really nasty. They put in a lot of bad terms in their term sheets, in particular participation, other things that really screw everybody. So the reason I bring it up is, regardless of how much you get into it, unless you really understand where things can get tricky, don't do it. So you're running your company, you're now raising your A round, you're doing, let's say, $4 million ARR, and you're raising money from Dan and I. And we say, you know, we love your company, Dave. We love the company, love your team. And, you know, we'd like to throw in, you know, a little bit of money in there with some other investors. What are your valuation expectations? Let's say we're raising $5 million total. You're raising $5 million. So we're part of it and we're bringing some of our friends, other investors. What are your valuation expectations? How much is the company worth as it is now?
Yeah. So for $5 million, what equity we get?
What do you think?
Yeah. No right or wrong. Just.
Why are you answering the question? You shouldn't. No, seriously. So the right answer is, you know, Ivan, you know, Dan, you guys are professional investors. What we care about is creating value, having the best partners in the business. Why don't you tell us what's reasonable and we'll take it from there. Learn to negotiate. Whoever gives the number, you're setting the ceiling. So, you know, it's also more appropriate for the investors to come up with that, okay?
Yeah.
So don't give a number.